Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I'm Anissa Teron, your host, and we have a special guest appearance for our host today, Elsa Marman, who's been with us as a guest before, and welcoming Polly from the UK. And just so grateful to have you all here today. We want to just excuse Jamila for not being here today because she's not feeling well and she's got quite a bit on her end. She will be missed. Her presence will certainly be missed from all of us. I just want to press live on our Instagram side so we know that we have that audience here too. And yeah, I want to introduce a little bit about Polly and then I'll hand over to Elsa and Polly to say hi. So, Polly, is your surname Hersey or Yersey?
Hearsay. Hearsay, yeah.
Yes. Is a mentor who shows entrepreneurs the powerful energy they hold and how to turn it into something life changing. She helps them move beyond their labels and embrace all of who they have become to design and create a business which delivers their vision, moving closer to global well being. And our topic theme this week is around nature's rhythm of self discovery, and we'll explore the profound connection between nature and the journey of self discovery. So, over to you, Elsa, just to say hi to everyone, and then we hand over to Polly to tell us where her story started.
Thanks, Anissa. Thank you for hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, where's my manners? My granny would kill me if she heard me now. Just jumping right in. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to join this type of discussion. Even though I'm your co-host today, I'm just gonna lean in and listen. I'm doing effective listening and active listening today because I had a day full of crying today. So today I need to listen. Thank you for having me. Welcome, Polly. It's lovely to have you here, and I'm extremely excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. Thank you both. Where do you want me to
So,
start?
tell us. So, you can start at the end, in the middle. There's no structure here today. We're going to flow with it, as we said. We never rehearse these sessions. We go with where you feel you want to start with, Polly.
Yeah.
Where did your story start?
Yeah, where did my story start? My story started when I was born. I know that sounds really strange, but my entire life, I have been outside a lot. You know, I think anybody who is outside a lot can, that when you have those moments when you're not allowed to be outside, it feels really, really difficult. So it's always been the case for me. So it's always been an important part of who I am, but I didn't realize that it was actually it was an important part of how I express myself. And that distinction I think is quite important. So as I was growing up, I was like, I'd be interested in this, and then I'd be interested in that. And I felt like I was like ping-ponging all over the place. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. So I'd be interested in something that seemed to be very different to something else. And I was thinking, but I'm not having that story that you're supposed to know what you want to do and how to get there. And I was just like, but I don't. I'm being pulled in this direction, and I'm being pulled in that direction, and I'm really interested in all of these things. At some point or another, it kind of dawned on me that all of those things are meant to be part of who you are. And it's just, I know that might seem like such an obvious statement, but if we get so constrained by the labels that society puts on us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are we a daughter? Are we a mother? Are we a brother? And what's your career label? And what's your label amongst your friends? And we get all of these labels, and they sort of say, well, if it doesn't fit within that label, then it doesn't fit within who I am. But that's the wrong way round. You know, at some point or another, I realized that you have to define who you are so that you can create, if you must have a label, that you create a label that is made for you. So that you don't have this sort of like off the shelf labeling that goes on. So place, I'd be going one direction and I'd go in the other. And I did that with my career. I would do one thing and then I would go and do something completely different. So I went from environmental conservation into homelessness. And that was like big, throw me in at the deep end because I knew nothing about it. But I had that, you start to realize that all the skills that you've built up from doing one thing and then doing another, they all mesh together and they allow you to approach things in a very unique way. So having done a lot of that, I found myself at a point where I was made redundant. And I thought, I don't want to go and work for anybody else anymore. I really don't want that weight of expectation that's coming from somebody else. I want the freedom to try and find something out. But that said, that's what I was feeling. That said, I still took on a conventional label and a conventional approach. That lasted very little time because I find myself just like, this is uncomfortable. I was doing consultancy work and that's not playing to my strengths. I was just focusing entirely on marketing and trying to think, how do I bring in all of the business stuff that I love to do, but it doesn't fit in with the label. So I had probably 2 years of really fighting myself when I started my business, of trying to work out how to present myself. And then I was sitting in a client meeting one day and we were really struggling with a brand concept. I started to read a testimonial and this single word leapt out of that testimonial and exploded. It was just like, it was, when I have those moments and then something just explodes into your consciousness and you just go, yes, I get it. It was one of those moments. And that word was elements. And she was talking, it wasn't how the context in which she said it, it was the word itself. And I just went, boom, that's it. And that was the concept that we needed for that particular client meeting, but it wasn't just the concept. From that very moment, they never left me. Even though I kept trying to go and do things in a normal way, I kept coming back. The elements kept showing up and they kept showing up. And then eventually I decided, I don't know, I was having one of those random streams of consciousness moments. I thought, I wonder if the elements are linked to personality profiles and types. I was just like one of those. So then I decided to test it. And then I realized they were. And then in the process of doing that, I opened up a world for me of understanding nature's rhythm and how you grow by following nature's rhythm rather than trying to force yourself down particular pathways. So it was just like that whole thing of just like following every single thread that has always intrigued me actually allowed me eventually to weave all of those pieces together, the pieces of me loving being in nature, the pieces that I love doing the marketing, I love doing the business development, I loved moving artistic approaches and all that creativity, all of those things that had been part of who I was. I suddenly went, and now they all make sense. Now I can weave them together in my own way. And so it's just, I think for me, the lesson that I've learned is that we have all of these experiences and we tend to put them in silos. And we think that was then, and that was then, and this is now, and we don't connect the dots between them all. So I love to do this thing where I ask people to moments and then look at the connections between them to say, oh yeah, I approached these two very different situations in a very similar way, or I got a very similar lesson out of them, and try and actually sort of like map things together a little bit. I'm getting completely off topic now, but sort of.
No.
Yeah,
I think you're still on topic, so please continue. And we'll just greet Ronald from the US. Thank you for being here with us, Ronald. Ronald is our regular, loyal supporter of this program. So welcome. Please continue,
Yes.
Polly. I'm loving. I'm intrigued. I'm putting pieces together as you're talking.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it's a very useful exercise that I get people to do. I might say, as a child, who were you? What? Not we often, as children, we have quite a lot of scars and things that have shaped us, but also as children, there were things that we loved to do, that we were really interested in, and maybe we've lost that thread as an adult, but it's really useful to look back and say, who was I as a child? And then compare and contrast that to who am I as an adult? What still really lights me up? And then you look at those and you go, oh, yeah, okay. And then you look at things like you know how you have memories that stick out more than others. And they'll come back to mind every so often. I think those memories are often trying to tell us something about the circumstances we were in. So I say, look at those key life experiences. And I do think it's important to look at your triumphs and your tragedies across the piece. And you say, start to look at that. And you actually say, okay, I was really strong here. I felt really emotional there. Or, you know, I really learned that particular lesson in that experience. And I think sometimes when you do all of that, you start to go, oh, my life has made sense. I remember the very first time I ever did this with a group of people, and somebody had a really she'd had a very traumatic experience in her life, and she did this exercise, and she just went, I kind of make sense to me now. So I can't, you know, I sort of like follow all of that. But as I was saying about the elements, they showed me what the rhythm of that is and where we construct our lives to work against our own rhythms. So I remember because obviously it's calling, you know, you talk about the hero's journey, and the hero's journey is I'm all happy, I'm all thumbs up, and then I have to go on a journey, and then I have to face some sort of trial, and then I come back a different person. And you know, there's lots of little bits, extra bits to that journey. That's nature's rhythm. I realized that, you know, the seasons that we have, not everybody has seasons, but, you know, the seasons that we have, you know, the rhythms that we have of seed to growth to flower to seed, all of that, that is the hero's journey. It's going through the same thing. And we've constructed this world where a very important part of that journey isn't allowed. And that's the part where we get to do the reflection and the growth, because when we're expected to be always productive, we're always supposed to be doing and moving forward. And we ignore the fact that an important part of the overall hero's journey, and every day is a hero's journey, really, because we learn something every single day, is that we have to go through this quiet space of introspection, reflection, because it's preparing us for the next. So, you know, a tree gets bigger every year, and it has these circles in the middle of it because it's putting down extra growth. So it's like, we don't think of it as sort of like a cycle, but more of a spiral. But in order to spiral up, you've got to have that moment where you give yourself some peace and quiet, where you take your foot off the pedal, because all that you do in the hero's journey, you go out and you discover that you're a different person to the person that you thought you were. You've got different skills, you've got different strengths, you're much stronger than you were, you're more creative, you're more resilient, you're more inventive than you thought you were. You've got to put that somewhere. You've got to work out, how do you deal with that as you move forward, because it makes you a different person. Your identity changes. Sorry, did you want to say something, Anissa?
Yeah, definitely. So firstly, I just want to acknowledge Ronald. I'm so glad to hear Deborah, your wife, is also joining us today. Jardine, the recording will be available. You can also find it on my YouTube channel. And you most certainly can go back to LinkedIn to listen more. But thanks for being here, Jardine. So I just want to go back again a few steps, because I almost heard you say there was this restlessness within you throughout your life, and it started at an early age. And this restlessness, you could not really tap into what that meant until, fast forward, You did so many different things, and that's part of the restlessness. In fact,
Yeah.
it's what I refer to in some of the work that I do in my coaching, which is it's one of our saboteurs. When we're so restless, we don't know what to do, so we're jumping from one thing to the other because we're not sure of who we are and our identity and where we belong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's simply because we've lost part of our essence, our natural childlike curiosity and essence of who we've always been, because we had to now conform and comply to a standard and what society expects of us as kids. You have to go to school and you have to learn. When you're done with school, you have to go and study and get an education. Okay, you need to get married. You then, so we're always having to jump from the one role, as you said earlier, to the next role. So we, in actual fact, inadvertently let go of the true essence of who we really are.
Yeah.
So we do constantly then become restless, and the labels and constructs that you alluded to earlier on. Yes, Jardine, he says we become less playful. We don't. We're no longer in that fascinated, curious, or anthropologist approach that we had as a child, that when we're at the ocean, we're turning over the rocks and we're exploring. So we then go into
Yeah.
almost this robotic way of living life, only to
Yeah.
discover through that experience of being, we call it retrenched in South Africa, being laid off from work. It's called, I don't know what you refer to it as, but
Redundant.
it's really
I'll say.
redundant. Yes. Yeah. So it's being made redundant. And that's the rhythm of the universe speaking back to us and saying, you are forgetting your elements that you are made up of. And the
Yes.
universe forces that hero's journey upon us to say, go into silence, go into reflection, go into solitude, let go, release yourself of these labels, these forms, and almost strip away who you thought
Mm.
you were so that you
Yeah.
can come back to that essence.
Mm.
When was that turning point for you? Was it when you were made redundant? Or was there another time that you were forced to go into solitude?
That is a really good question, because some people do actually quite regularly have those points in their lives where circumstances conspire and just says, no, you are going to stop, you are going to completely stop. And I've never had one of those situations come up to me, so I've always had to make myself slow down, and I'm not very good at it. But I've had moments that have made me do a real stock take. I've done a double take because something's happened that's given me such an abrupt sort of like, oh, that wasn't what I thought was happening. Something else is happening. So I've had those moments where I've had to go, oh, okay, let me just rethink this and recalibrate. So I think that is why it has taken me longer. Because I didn't have that sort of like, you will slow down. It wasn't pushed upon me. But I think the thing, but there's the other side of that is that as a child, I absolutely convinced myself as a child that I wasn't creative. I don't know how. I mean, it was not as a young child. I was incredibly creative. And this is when you were talking about that childlike essence, we forget that the way that we grow the most and we learn the most is through play. That's how children learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to make that space. And I think that's where it dawned on me, is that when you're flowing with the elemental cycle, which broadly from earth to air to fire to water, the air aspect of that is so important to that curiosity and reinstilling that curiosity and making us think, oh, Oh, I wonder, and that's where rabbit holes can be the most amazing things. And I know that they're scorned upon because they're not productive, but they're amazing places because rabbits make warrens where there's loads of interconnections, and that's where you go. You go down something about it, and you explore, and you want to play with it, and you discover that it links to something else, and it's linking to something else that you have, and that's part of the hero's journey of shaping yourself. So you go, what can I take of this? What fits with who I am, and what can I do with it? And that's the fun part. And for me, life should be like that. And I really think business should be like that as well. It should be fun. It should be explorative. It should be creative, because that's when we learn who we are by doing things, by putting a label on ourselves. It's in the doing. That's the whole point of the hero's journey. You learn who you are and what your true identity is by putting yourself in situations that you wouldn't have otherwise experienced. And so it could be, setting foot into a different building that you've never been in before is the hero's journey, because you realize that you can do it. And then if we use that as a metaphor for life, then we realize that the more explorative we do, the more curious we are, the more playful we are, the more we grow.
If I may, I'm dying to tell you, ladies. I just want to cry right now. Like, I have had 2 weeks of nonstop crying every day, Polly. Um, because what you're saying right now resonates so much with me. Oh, I left my job with no plan B, no backup plan. All I knew was I am not made to be in a confined space, because that is what it felt like. Yeah, I was impacting, I was changing lives, young people's lives, etc., but to a certain standard, to a certain degree. And it annoyed me because I'm in my hero's journey right now. Yes, we are heroes every single day, but there's just something about this season, about this journey, the self-discovery journey. And I'm only been home for a month and a half. It's not easy being a housewife and a stay-at-home mom. To anybody considering it, think twice. And I've been applying for jobs. I've gone for interviews and things look promising, and then to get this rejection and just it just obviously it makes you despondent. And now what you're saying about your journey, it's like I'm sitting here and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this, like Anissa loves to remind me, and all her people that she mentors and coaches, a rejection is a redirection, and I just need to accept the redirection. And like you just said earlier, the uncomfortability, you should enjoy being in uncomfortable spaces. And so that's why I find myself now, oh, I love playing in this uncomfortable space where I am. Yes, I cry. It doesn't mean I am angry, I am permanently sad. It's just very new to me. So my first response with something that's new and that's triggering for me, is crying. I'd much rather cry than shout at anybody or throw anybody with cutlery or crockery. I cry. I cry for 15 minutes, solid 15 minutes, and I let it all out. I let the water, the river flow, and then I pull myself towards myself, and I think back about, okay, how did that make me feel? What is my next steps, without forcing myself to control? Because that's the other thing. We tend to control in a space that's just supposed to be natural. Everything is supposed to just flow naturally. The emotions are supposed to flow naturally. We must go through all the motions of the oceans, like I was saying a friend earlier. So I love that you mentioned this, and I'm not. It's kind of a confirmation for me that I'm not going crazy. I'm not delusional. But what I'm interested in knowing through all of this, your hero's journey, the redundancy, or retrenchment, like we call it, what have you done to maintain your filled cup? Even if it's just halfway. A cup is 250 milliliters, halfway, 125. How do you keep it at 125 or at 250? What is the secret? What is the spice? What is the sauce?
Well, for me, it's about doing the thing that makes me feel alive. So, you're saying about the crying, that's so important, because allowance means that they're not getting stuck in you, and they're not getting stuck in your body, and then they're not making you feel even more uncomfortable. For me, it is as simple as making sure I've got time outside, because that makes me feel really alive. But it's really funny that you were talking about the cups, because I've just been really ruminating on this. We talk about you should always fill your own cup first, and da da da. But actually, with the labeling that we give ourselves, sometimes it's not actually physically possible to fill that cup, because our perception is that the cup is smaller than it actually is. Does that make sense? So we have this psychology that actually I've got a 250 ml cup, but actually it only holds 100 ml. So that's all we put in it. And so actually learning how big that cup really is kind of important, and that's quite a big mind shift that we need to make, a mindset shift. So, but we only do that natural rhythm, because you can't work that out if you don't allow yourself to flow, and that's the thing. So it's like it's following that sort of broad hero's journey in whenever you're experiencing something, of saying, well, this is who I am now. Oh, there's a big wide world out there that I didn't know about. And yes, I can put myself into it, and I will reshape my identity in some way. And then that makes something else possible. So it's like this constant sort of growth, but it's like coming back to that and saying, you've got to push to understand what that cup is in the first place. Does that make sense?
A lot of
Very
sense.
much so.
I'm so curious to know, like, what was the scariest moments in, you were talking about reshaping your identity. Sometimes we think that once we on the self-discovery journey, this is what personally what I found during my self-discovery journey, is that there's just one identity. So now I'm in my 30s, there's this specific identity, and I'm just and I'm like, when I have these conversations with myself, I'm like, no girl, you got it all wrong. Whoever told you that is lying. You're constantly going through identity shift and reshaping and learning something new about yourself in these uncomfortable spaces, and you thrive in these uncomfortable spaces. But there's also the very scary parts that we don't like speaking about, because it makes us look weak to people. But that is where the significance lie. So I want to know, what was the scary moments in you reshaping your identity, or in your hero's journey? What's the thing that really like shocked you? Like when you see a spider, like, ah, what is that?
Yeah. I don't know if it's the thing for me has been really I've been comfortable within about who I've been becoming.
Wow. Sure.
But not necessarily sure how to tell other people about
Wow.
what's changed. So for me, I've been comfortable with talking to family about that and saying, well, okay, I'm because people will still say to me, oh, you do marketing, don't you? And it's like, no, I dropped that label many years ago, because everyone just would come up to me and ask me to do their website or something. And it's like, well, that's not really what I do. I've got a completely different take. I use nature to work out how to build businesses. I use the elements to understand how energy works, and all of that. So, and being able to talk about that, and acknowledge that I was not doing things. The most scary thing is about coming out the closet, basically, and saying, no, this is who I am.
Yes.
And then you start to go, well, are you going to accept who I am? I accept who I am, but are you going to accept who I am? So I think one of the biggest scary bits is when you change, what's going to change around you? And are the people who are important to you going to change with you? Or are they going to be along for the ride?
Let me get my tissues. I need to get my tissues, ladies.
Colleen.
Just give me a second, cause
So while she's getting her tissue, Polly, that's quite a profound thing that you've stated there, because I want to bring back the rabbit hole that you mentioned. It's almost like Alice in Wonderland, being willing to go down that rabbit hole and not knowing what she's going to be finding. And I'm almost thinking, what's the other one in The Wizard of Oz? what is her name?
Mm.
Oh, is she Alice? No, she's not Alice. No, she,
No.
Let's go
She's
find her.
but
anyway.
oh my God, how
But
can we not remember?
I forgot to. Anyway,
Dorothy. No, that's
so
her real name.
Dorothy.
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 So
Dorothy.
So it's about Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, going through all these journeys, discovering new things in the wizard and being fascinated, being mesmerized, being fearful potentially in the same way with Alice in Wonderland, but it's being willing to dare and be courageous and go down that rabbit hole because it doesn't actually matter who comes along for the ride and who's left behind, because that in and of itself is the realignment, it's the reshaping. And we have this no judgment part because we realize if we've gone through our hero's journey, it gives us deeper wisdom and insight. And we are the
Mm.
ones that are now have revealed a part of ourselves to ourselves. And so we don't have judgment for those that are not going to follow. That's why am I back? Have I lost you
Yes,
guys?
you back.
No, you're back.
Yeah,
You're
yes, you're
back.
back.
So that's why I love that you can say, Polly, actually, I know who I am and I accept who I am because you've had to face those inner demons, those you had to slay those
Yeah.
villains, those dragons, which I so often talk about. You're no longer needing to project to the outside world because you went down that dark rabbit hole. You went on the journey with the Wizard of Oz. You were Dorothy
Yeah.
and you were Alice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
coming back into that, it's meaning that
Yeah.
you've got the
Absolutely.
wisdom. So those that carry on in the journey with you, you're okay with it. You have no attachment whether they do that.
Mm.
But I want to ask you this. How would you then define grit in your own life? Because it does take a certain level of grit for you to be able to take that journey and
I
be okay with nobody following.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, as somebody who grew up not really having a sense of identity, self-identity, and taking a long time to find it, that is the grit. It is having the self-identity and knowing that that identity is going to change, and you go through those seasons of identity. But it's having that grit to, because it's about saying, this is who I am, this is what's important to me, and this is what I'm going to do with my life. That to me is grit.
Mm.
Because it means just turning right, you're going to turn left. And you're okay being on your own. You're okay being in a field of one. You're okay living your life in a completely different way to all of your family, maybe, which can be difficult. So to me, that's the grit. It's the dedication to who I am and saying, I'm going to continue working on who I am and finding out more about who I am. And I'm not going to let myself get derailed from that. That to me is the grit.
Mm. I'm typing it into the comments so that it can stay there. It's such a beautiful one to accept who you are. I love that. So
Yeah.
Ronald says, my wife changed and I am not threatened. And he also says to you, Polly, you said something, Polly, that resonated with my wife regarding identity. Then Jardine has left and he made another beautiful comment. He said, let me go and join this other meeting before I am made redundant. Have a great weekend. And thanks, Anissa, for your pearls. We need less pearls and more pearls. I want to bring that into the conversation because I think it's quite a profound comment that he's left us with. There's a lot of wisdom in that because what we go to is to almost medicate and find ways to repress that true essence. Now, you spoke earlier on, and I want you to delve a bit more deeper, Polly. And I'm just picking up on nuggets because there was a lot said, and I want to bring it back each time. You shared a lot of wisdom. you spoke about the air being our curiosity. Do you want to maybe delve into and bring this point around pills versus pearls, why we wouldn't go and do that, and what of the elements would make us not repress and go and medicate and forget about our pearls?
Okay.
Which of the elements?
So the earth, which is where we're at. So it's our so you have earth, air, fire, and water. Okay, that's the Western version of it. Obviously, in Chinese version is they have 5, and they're slightly different. But this is what makes sense to me, and I think it makes a lot of sense to some of the Western cultures in particular. So earth is like really your safety. It's your current identity. But I say that in the acknowledgement that we never stay the same if we're actually allowing ourselves to move. But it's where you are building, and you would get really uncomfortable because there's something brewing, like there's a seed, and it's like trying to swell and sprout, and you're not letting it. So that to me is where we push stuff down, because there's in when we're in an earth phase, there is a lot of energy building. It's subtle, and it's coming from within. It's not coming from outside. So much of our life, the energy and the pressure comes from outside. But when we are going through an identity shift, the energy, and that's not something we're used to. So our identity bubbles up from within. Our motivation to do it bubbles up from within. And we're not used to that, because that pulls us in a slightly different direction to the ones that we're told we should be taking. So that's where the restlessness starts, and then that flows into air, where the curiosity takes over. So when you give it permission to move, that's when you're going to start disappearing off down rabbit holes. You're going to start sending out shoots, looking at different ideas. You're just going to go all over the place. And where that becomes a problem, in every element, there is a point at which you will stall, is because when you've got your head in the clouds, so to speak, and there is a phrase that, a common phrase that for each of the elements, guaranteed, stuck in the mud, head in the clouds, then your problem is that you will never pull it together to do something with it. Okay, and if you don't do something with it, you'll get yourself into, oh, it's just a pipe dream and I can never do anything with it. Which is why fire is so important, and that comes next, because that's where the passion to do something about it forces you into action. So this is where I work a lot with entrepreneurs. So in business context, this is where the point at which you have to actually start speaking about what you do, and you have to start sharing it. So you need that fire energy, but it focuses all that curiosity that you've done, or everything that you've explored, it focuses it into something to who you are and what you're here to do. And I think and because it's bubbled up from the inside rather than being put upon you from the outside, it's like, that's the grit. That's where the grit really comes into place, because you have this strong sense of identity. Then you do something about it. But if you don't do something about it, this is when people burn out, by the way, because they get burnt by that, I got to do something, but they don't do anything about it. So they medicate it down. And then you do something about it, and you become somebody else. You've grown something about it, and you move into water. And that's a really important space of learning how to reshape your identity. But a lot of people get stuck there as well by just being overly allowing their emotions to rule in that space. It's more about learning how your emotions shape what comes next. So that you can get stuck you can do that pushing down at any point in that, and it depends on who you are as a person as to where that is. Like, me, I love my rabbit holes, and I am very happy coming up with all sorts of stuff, but so my challenge has always been trying to move that forward a little bit. Oh yeah, I must do it. I have these great ideas, and then I'll go off and do another great idea instead. And that's my Achilles heel. But everybody will do it somewhere.
Also,
I love
anything
this.
you've got branding to ask.
I took notes about the process, the elements process. I look at it, and earth, I'm centered, I'm here, I'm present, but I'm restless. And now I allow air to come in. I open the windows, I open the doors, and I'm slowly allowing fire to enter, but I'm stuck. And I'm only stuck because I do have a pipe dream, and why I call it a pipe dream, and Anissa will probably punch me for this later. It's because I'm not actioning because of the fear of failure, the
Yeah.
fear of burning out. So what I'm not realizing, and what I just realized now, is I'm in fire. That element is there, but it's burning me because I'm not moving. I'm stagnant. And I find that a lot of us are there. We are completely stagnant. We are burnt out because of all the thoughts that creep up and all the doubts that creep up. Um, and it is amazing that you actually took us through this process. It's made my stomach burn and turn because there's a lot of homework that we need to do.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't know who we know. But like you mentioned before, I just want to go back to the closet thing. We always think that people that are in the closet are LGBTQ community. And I've got a lot of friends in that community. I've got family in that community. And it's not only them that's in a closet. They're more brave than us to come out of the closet.
Oh,
It's,
Yeah.
it,
that's true.
Absolutely.
it's us. It's us that know who we are. We've changed as the seasons change. We change, but we are fighting because we are afraid of the people that we will lose in our circle. And I fully
Mhm.
believe your network is your net worth.
Yes.
You need to lose some to make more. Simple. So thank
Mhm.
you for taking me through that, and thank you for actually for saying that it's not only those that community that's in the closet. We as people are very much in a closet, um,
Yeah.
and it causes severe. What is the word, Anissa? You love using this term, um, something syndrome.
Dis-ease? Oh,
No.
dissonance? Imposter
No, there's this
syndrome?
imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. I found that on this journey that I'm on right now, Polly, I came out of the closet. And my sister-in-law will always laugh at me and say her mind is blown as to how I've changed in such a short period, and I've shed so many people that don't add value to my life. I've just shut down. I don't engage. I don't check in. I don't listen to your complaints anymore, to gossip, etc. If it's not fruitful, if it's not serving me, doesn't deserve me, I just back off. So I'm in that phase where I've put my foot out. Actually, I've put my foot and my arm out of the closet. It's now just a matter of getting my entire body out and using this fire to
Yeah.
action. And once I get to water, it's over for the world. Oh, I'm going to be such a diva when I get to water. I'm excited. And I'm
You know,
excited to
Polly,
share this. With so
yeah.
sorry, Anis, I'm just so excited, guys. I'm so excited to share this with my youth, with my graduates. I have a burning desire, and it's happening, to create a community of graduates to give them the right tools for life after
Mhm.
secondary and tertiary, and to tell them this is the real world. It, it, this is not a facade. This is not a game. This is the real world. You are going to be chopped into pieces, and then you must mold yourself back together again. So, thank you for sharing this, because you've made my workload for next week's training a lot lighter.
So, Polly, I think there's so many gems here. I mean, I
Yep.
want to bring it a bit closer now to, what are those strategies or mindset shifts that you give people on their journey in maintaining resilience when they are not in alignment? Because for the elements to work, at least for my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your area of expertise, right? How do we make them flow naturally with one another? What is it that we need to be aware of or looking out for? how do we know when we're going to be triggered? You spoke about triumphs and trials.
Yeah.
Now, how do we connect all of that back to the elements and
Well,
give
it's
it?
yeah. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Elsa just did the most amazing demonstration of how to do it, because she reflected on her situation and said, this is where I was, and this is where I am now. So the thing to do is to sort of say, well, which sort of state am I in now? Am I in a state of what's pulling me, what's calling me? And then that'll give you an idea of where you are, and that tells you then what comes next. Because if you don't move into what comes next, then there's no growth that happens. So it's like when you are in air, you know fire, and when you are in fire, and I tell you, people fight this. This is the one that they fight the most. They fight dropping from fire into water, because when we're in fire, we find our voice, we find our identity, we find the high life. We just aren't riding the crest of the wave, so to speak, and we don't want to drop away from that. So that's the bit that people really resist, and that's why burnout is now what? Possibly the number one topic that people are talking about, because everyone's burnt out, because they don't drop out. So if you are in that state, brilliantly, if you want to maintain your well-being and you want to keep your business flowing, or your life flowing, whatever you do, be aware you're growing in this moment, and you need to do some work to integrate it, because if you don't integrate it, you're not going to grow and you're going to burn out. So it's just always knowing where you are and having your eye on, oh, that's what's going to come next. So when people quite often say, I've had this great idea, and they're all fired up about it, and then they go, right, I'm going to put the details together, and I go, whoa. If you want to do that, follow that cycle. So if you've got an inspired idea and you're really passionate about it, the next thing for you to do is to think about how you feel about it. How does it connect to you as a person? Then do the details. But if you're in that space where you're going, oh, this makes me feel like all of this is possible, then you do the details. But for heaven's sakes, never jump from that sort of curiosity stage to doing the details completely. You have to flow through the whole thing. And that's how, I teach people how to do this if they're writing a sales page, for example, because when you do follow this rhythm, it's how we are wired to be. This is in our DNA to work in this way, whereas the psychology pings you all over the place. I actually mapped the traditional business development process and overlaid it with a natural one, which I've created. And what happens in the mainstream one, it bounces you back and forward. Literally, you go air, fire, air, fire, air, fire, air, fire, earth. It's like, what? And you wonder why people are so confused and why their energy is scattered. But there is an easier way of doing it, just following that earth, air, fire, water flow. Everything comes up in the right time. If you're writing a sales page, that's how we think. So you don't have to use psychology in the same way. It's just remembering who we are. It's just it's remembering that rhythm is up to find it. So once you're aware of it, then you can say, I'm in a water state right now, and I need to move into an earth one's coming up when I'm ready.
I love that you mentioned corporate, helping people, sales pitches, etc. So my question is, do you feel that employers are largely responsible for people being between air and fire, like stagnant? And what do you think companies, or specifically HR, can do to change this, to help move the employees into water and be consistent? Because like you said, after water you'll come back to earth, because now there's a new identity shaping that needs to happen.
That is the most juicy question of all, because you've got the individual employee, you've got the team, and then you've got the business. So you might have multiple levels of teams. So this is going to have, if you think about how a mouse has a really fast heartbeat and an elephant has a really slow heartbeat, okay? So the business itself is going to have the elephant's heartbeat. It's going to be having a slower rhythm, whereas the team will be having a faster rhythm, and then the individual is probably going to be going through this at a completely different rate. So it really comes down to self-awareness at an organizational level about where the business is and what phase of its life is it in. And you can actually map that elemental growth to the natural elemental growth cycle of businesses. And then looking at the team, what's the team doing? So that you can then start to be more aware of, at an HR level, at a manager level, of what everyone's going through and how they are individually related to this. It's interesting that you asked that question, because my starting point with my entire relationship with the elements was, are they linked to personality types? And I was using something that I'd learned from my leadership and management training, which is the True Colors system, to the elements so easily. And understanding, for me, that was a really transformative thing, to be able to go away from that training and go, you're an orange, you're a green, you're a blue. I understand how you're thinking and you're functioning a little bit. And it's not that they are permanently stuck like that, because for me, the elements are not a label. They're not an archetype, a personality type that is fixed in stone in the way that people might think their Myers-Briggs type was. You're constantly moving through it. So everybody's kind of slightly different. So I'm very air orientated, but I work best in fire energy, bizarrely. But my interpretation of the elements is different because I'm air orientated. Somebody who's water orientated is going to have a slightly different perception. So it gives you an ability to understand and manage the individual and work to their natural rhythms within a rhythm. So it's a bit like lots of little cogs. You know, when you've got tiny little cogs and then bigger one and then a bigger one. And that would be my analogy for the corporate to team to individual.
I'm ready to share that part with all the employers in the world and tell them.
Yes.
Well, maybe you need to bring Polly over to South Africa and let her walk alongside you on this journey.
You will disrupt every single corporate company and on the executive level, like a little puzzle, or like Legos, drop it and then rebuild.
It is so funny that you raised this, because one of the things that I have, it's in my sights, and it's one of the things I really want to develop is and work with corporates around how do they actually manage their businesses in a more natural way, so that they make it easier for their employees to work at their fullest potential and hold a culture that supports them. Because
talent retention is a huge issue.
Yeah.
In South Africa, from what I've researched. It's a huge issue. The systems need to be updated. We need to start implementing new strategies, people management strategies. But I think that is a conversation for another day. I can go down the rabbit hole when it comes to HR strategies. I can go for days.
I just want to acknowledge, I forgot to acknowledge our Instagram visitors, Lucretia and Craig. Thank you for being here with us. I know there was someone on YouTube as well. Thank you for being here with us as well. Now we're sitting with the last remaining 6 minutes, and I want to tap into one final part that we didn't do a lot of talking around, but I think it's quite pertinent to maybe look at that, which is the personality. And I think it was, who says it? Your personality becomes your personal reality. I don't know who says that. I know somebody. I don't know which one. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was Bruce Lipton, but I know somebody says it. And let's think about the interplay between your personality, the elements, and how we factor having this element of grit, grace, and gratitude in achieving personal growth and transformation. How do you look at that? By adapting our personalities, leveraging the elements, to the advantage of our transformation? How would you guide us to do that?
Well, one of the first things I do with anybody is to actually work out preference from a personality point of view, because to me the elements are personalities. You know, they're very different. So some people are naturally quite flamboyant, and some people are naturally shy. And I think to me that is, in a strange way, less relevant than anchoring them into the real energy of what they're here to do. Because I think most people dampen that down a little bit. And when you want somebody to really come up and you want them to really shine and show how incredibly talented and magical they are, you have to kind of connect them into the bigger thing behind the personality. Because I think about my son, who's got an ability to sort of like kind of play the fool a little bit. He'll get really loud when he wants to be ignored. And he gets misinterpreted quite a lot. So I think really allowing, and this is why I do it with energy, because I think people know how to read energy, even if they think they don't. And as you connect people to the energy of what they really feel they're here to do, then the personality starts to make sense. And then you can sort of like flow it on from there. So in terms of that grit comes from that real fire, that inner fire. And then that gratitude and grace comes from the fact that you're flowing. You're actually following it, because nobody feels grateful when they feel resentful because they have to do something. They might feel slightly I can't think of the word, but you know, they might feel good about themselves for the fact that they can put themselves through something they don't enjoy in order to get to meet an end. But actually, if you want that real gratitude, it's when you're giving yourself, your deepest self, a voice, then finding gratitude is really, it feels much more graceful as well. So I think behind the personality is actually tapping into that desire. What is that desire that lives behind the personality?
So create a new reality, be in flow with the elements, be willing to be daring and bold and courageous, and just flow with life. That's the core message that I'm getting. But connect to, we are one with the universe. We are one with the elements. It was always who we were meant to be. And when we change that, that's when burnout, that's where dissonance, that's where the disharmony, and we're not feeling in our essence. I want to thank you, Polly, for bringing such beautiful, beautiful essence and insight and wisdom to something that is actually quite so simple, but we make it way more complex.
Yeah.
And I want to acknowledge that you've brought that to us today. And thank you for being here. That's on my end. I want to ask you if there's anything burning that you'd like to share with us in the last 2 minutes before we end off the segment. And then I want you to stay on when we end the live so that we do a short debrief afterwards.
Okay, cool. No, the only thing I want to say is how incredibly grateful I am to both of you for just your both of your ability to just go really deep, which is just music to my ears, because I love going deep really, really quickly. But to be so open and so free and so quick to pick up. I mean, it's been a delightful. I've had so much fun having this conversation, because it's just, we've just gone so many different places with it, and I'm just really, really grateful that you've given me that opportunity to meet you and get to know you and have this conversation.
And where does the audience reach you? Because this has been an intriguing conversation. Okay. Where can they reach you?
So just head over to my website, which is pollyhearsey.co.uk. And if you click through to my resources, you'll actually find a quiz where you can find out what your primary is, and it'll give you some insights on how you manage that as a person. But if you've got a business, it can take you further on and you can find out what your business element is and all sorts going on there. But yeah, head over to my website.
I might take you up on understanding what my business profile is. So yeah, we'll be in touch on that. Also, anything you want to end off and close and say to both Polly and the audience?
Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that has joined us. It's a delight to have everybody here and engaged and learning. And thank you, Polly. Thank you for teaching us, for educating us, for sharing your wisdom and not gatekeeping. You come highly paid. You have to have money for Polly because she comes highly recommended. I've been going through your LinkedIn profile. And I'm just grateful to be in the same space and environment and to exchange energies with you. Please don't stop. Please don't stop
Yeah, me too.
sharing. I would love also maybe to recommend, if you don't, I don't know, I haven't gone through your website yet, to create little YouTube videos with sharing about the elements. It's so important for the world to know what you have to say. We need more voices like you. And Anissa, thank you for inviting Polly, for inviting me at 2:45 today to be here. I'm meant to be here. I am definitely
The elements drew you here.
100%. 100%. So thank you so much.
Elsa, you have held this space beautifully and you brought a lot of value to this conversation. So thank you for being here. You will be invited more regularly. And Polly, I think you would agree, she definitely brought such a beautiful energy and realness and truth.
This is my interview, and I take it. I passed, got the job.
You're most welcome to join us always whenever you want. So on that note, thank you for being here. I'm going to end the live. Polly and Elsa, do stay on just for a short debrief. We'll see you again next week. And who knows, you'll see more of Elsa when she can avail herself and when she's in a fire. So take care until next week. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody.